The conference room fell silent as the vote came in unanimous against him. "You're just too different, Archer," his so-called best friend Jake said, eyes fixed on the table. And in that moment Archer knew his being gay had just cost him everything he had built with this group. The words landed like a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. He sat frozen in the sleek San Francisco tech incubator space they had called home for 4 years, the glass walls overlooking the bustling streets of the financial district now feeling like prison bars. The pack, Jake, Tyler, Ryan, and Marcus, had been more than colleagues. They were the brothers he never had, the ones who celebrated every late-night coding session, every small funding win for their fitness app startup. They marketed themselves as the ultimate bro collective, all high fives and protein shakes, selling an image of unbreakable male camaraderie to gyms across California. Archer had hidden who he really was until last week's team dinner, when the weight of secrecy finally cracked him open and he told them about Miles. The silence that followed had been polite at first. Then the excuses started. "It's not personal. The investors won't get it. We have to protect the brand." Now the vote was done. Archer stood slowly, chair scraping loud in the quiet. "This is it, then?" His voice sounded steadier than he felt. Jake shrugged, not meeting his eyes. "We'll buy out your shares. Fair price. Clean break." Archer grabbed his laptop bag and walked out without another word, the heavy glass door swinging shut behind him like a final period. Outside, the late afternoon sun cut through the fog, too bright for the darkness settling in his chest. He wandered down Market Street, phone buzzing with group chat notifications being removed one by one. Each ping felt like another piece of himself being deleted. Back in his small apartment in the Mission District, he dropped onto the couch and stared at the ceiling, replaying every shared memory. The road trips to pitch investors, the inside jokes, the way they had all shown up when his mom got sick last year. Now none of it mattered. His phone rang. "Miles." Archer answered on the second ring. "They voted me out," he said, voice cracking for the first time. Miles's calm reply came instantly. "I'm coming over. You're not doing this alone." 30 minutes later Miles let himself in with the spare key, carrying 2 coffees and a quiet strength that had always grounded Archer. They sat on the floor, backs against the couch, and Archer poured it all out, the humiliation, the fear that maybe Jake was right, that he really didn't fit. Miles listened without interrupting, then simply said, "They lost the best part of that team today. Not you." That night they talked until the city lights dimmed. Archer told Miles about growing up in a small Texas town where different was never celebrated, about the careful mask he wore through college until San Francisco gave him space to breathe. Miles shared his own stories of family dinners that turned cold when he brought home his first boyfriend. By morning Archer felt raw but strangely lighter. He opened his laptop, fingers hovering over the keys. "What if I build something real?" he asked. Miles smiled. "Then let's build it." The idea had been simmering for months. An app called Forge, a space where men could connect honestly about identity, mental health, and ambition without the performative toughness. It felt dangerous and right at the same time. Archer started sketching wireframes while Miles made breakfast. For the first time since the door slammed shut, the future didn't feel empty. It felt possible. The following weeks blurred into a rhythm of quiet determination. Archer filed the paperwork to separate from the pack, ignoring the pointed email from their lawyer about non-compete clauses. He reached out to a few contacts who had quietly supported him over the years, lining up freelance gigs to pay rent while he poured every spare hour into Forge. Nights stretched long, the glow of his screen the only light in the apartment. Miles became a constant presence, bringing takeout, offering design feedback, and reminding Archer to sleep. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, Archer looked up from his code and said, "I keep waiting for the panic to hit again." Miles set down his sketchpad. "It will, but we'll face it together." Archer reached across the table, their fingers brushing, and for the first time the touch felt like more than comfort. It felt like the beginning of something solid. Yet the doubt lingered. Late one night, after another 12-hour coding session, Archer stared at the half-finished prototype and whispered to the empty room. What if they were right? What if I'm just not enough without them? The question hung in the air, unanswered, but the cursor kept blinking, waiting for him to keep going. The cursor kept blinking, and Archer kept typing. By the end of the second month, the core functionality of Forge was live in beta. A clean, intuitive platform where users could join moderated circles, share anonymous stories, and access resources tailored for men navigating identity in high-pressure environments. Miles had designed a logo that felt strong without being aggressive. Simple lines forming an open door. They tested it with a small group of friends and strangers from online forums, and the feedback poured in messages of relief of finally feeling seen. Archer read every one, chest tight with an emotion he couldn't name. Success tasted different when it was yours alone. But the old wounds refused to close. Jake sent a text out of nowhere. Heard you're doing your own thing. Hope it works out. Archer stared at the message for 10 minutes before deleting it. The next day he received an unexpected call from his mother in Texas. Your father saw something online about the pack splitting up, she said carefully. Archer's stomach dropped. He hadn't told them the real reason. Mom, I am seeing someone. His name is Miles. The line went quiet. When his mother spoke again, her voice was soft but strained. We love you, Archer. We just want you safe. Safe. The word echoed the same caution he had grown up hearing. He ended the call feeling smaller than he had in weeks. Miles found him on the balcony later, staring at the city lights. They'll come around, Miles said, slipping an arm around his shoulders. Archer leaned into the touch. I hope so. But right now I have to prove something to myself first. The weeks that followed tested that resolve. A venture capital firm Archer had pitched to while still with the pack suddenly ghosted him after learning about the split. Whispers traveled fast in the tight-knit San Francisco scene. One afternoon Tyler, the quietest member of the old group, showed up at Archer's door unannounced. Look, man, I didn't vote against you. But Jake, he was worried about optics. Archer stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Optics. That's what I was to you guys? A liability? Tyler looked away. I'm sorry. For what it's worth, the app you're building sounds legit. The apology felt hollow, yet Archer let him in for coffee. They talked for an hour about old times, and when Tyler left, Archer realized some bridges weren't completely burned, just cracked. That night he and Miles celebrated the beta reaching 500 users with cheap wine on the rooftop. Miles raised his glass. To doing it your way. Archer clinked back, but inside a new fear stirred. What if success meant losing the last threads connecting him to his past? The thought kept him awake until dawn. The following morning he threw himself into marketing. He wrote honest blog posts about why Forge existed, stories drawn from his own life without naming names. The posts went viral in niche communities. Users started tagging friends, and suddenly the waitlist doubled overnight. Miles stayed late helping refine the onboarding flow, their shoulders brushing as they worked side by side at the kitchen table. In those quiet hours, Archer felt the shift. The relationship was no longer just support. It was partnership in every sense. One weekend they drove out to Muir Woods, escaping the city noise. Walking among the ancient redwoods, Miles stopped and turned to him. You're building something that matters, Archer. Don't let their voices drown that out. Archer pulled him close, the forest quiet around them, and for the first time the future felt wide open instead of terrifying. Back in the city, the momentum kept building. A respected tech blogger reached out for an interview. Archer hesitated. Going public meant his parents would see, meant the pack would see. But Miles encouraged him. This is your story now. The article published on a Wednesday, and by Friday Forge had crossed 2,000 active users. Archer stared at the analytics dashboard, heart pounding. He had done this. Not the group. Not the old safety net. Him. Yet even as pride swelled, A single message from an unknown number arrived. Nice app. Too bad you had to burn bridges to get here. Archer deleted it, but the sting remained. He turned to Miles, who was sketching new feature icons. They're watching, Archer said quietly. Miles set down his tablet. Let them watch. We're just getting started. We're just getting started. The words became Archer's mantra through the next intense months. Forge rolled out new features, voice note circles for men who struggled to type their feelings, career mentorship matching that ignored traditional hierarchies, and a resource library curated with therapists who understood queer experiences. User numbers climbed steadily, but so did the pressure. Investors who had once ignored him now flooded his inbox after the viral article. Archer took the first meeting alone, dressed in the same button-down he used to wear to pack pitches. The two women across the table leaned forward when he described the mission. We love the authenticity, one said. This isn't another bro app. This is needed. By the time he left the glass tower, he had a term sheet in his email. He called Miles immediately. They want to invest. Real money. Miles's excited laugh filled the line. You did it. But celebration was short-lived. Archer's father called that same evening. Saw the article, son. You could have warned us. The disappointment in his dad's voice cut deeper than any boardroom rejection. Archer tried to explain, but the conversation ended with his father saying, We raised you better than this. He hung up and sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. Miles found him there and simply sat beside him, shoulder to shoulder, until the silence felt less heavy. They're hurting too, Miles offered gently. Doesn't make it right, Archer answered, but the words lacked heat. Work became the only place he could control the narrative. He poured the pain into product updates, adding a private journal feature that let users track their emotional growth. The team, now just him and Miles plus 2 part-time contractors, worked around the clock. Late one night, after Miles had fallen asleep on the couch, Archer stood at the window watching the city lights and realized something profound. He no longer needed the old group's approval to feel whole. The realization scared him almost as much as it freed him. The next morning a package arrived, a bottle of whiskey from Jake with a note. Congrats on the funding round. No hard feelings. Archer stared at it for a long time before pouring 2 glasses and calling Miles over. They toasted ironically to old friends and new beginnings. But the whiskey tasted bitter. Archer knew the note was less about goodwill and more about the fact that the pack's own app had stalled, losing users to newer competitors. The contrast felt sharp. As winter turned to spring, Forge hit 10,000 users. The investor money allowed Archer to rent a small office in Hayes Valley. Nothing fancy, just enough space for whiteboards and natural light. Miles moved in a drafting table, and together they watched the space fill with sticky notes and laughter. One afternoon, while they were debating color schemes, Archer looked up and said, I couldn't have done any of this without you. Miles smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes. You could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to. Their relationship deepened in small, steady ways, shared grocery runs, quiet mornings with coffee on the balcony. The way Miles knew exactly when Archer needed space and when he needed to be held. Yet the outside world kept testing them. A former PAC investor approached Archer at a networking event, offering to reintegrate Forge under the old brand. Archer declined politely but firmly. Walking home that night, he felt a surge of pride that surprised him. The next crisis arrived in the form of a leaked internal email from the PAC blaming internal divisions for their slowdown. Social media picked it up, and suddenly Archer's name trended in tech circles. Comments ranged from supportive to cruel. He read them all, then closed the laptop. I'm not going back there, he told Miles later. No matter what they say. Miles kissed his forehead. Then don't. Keep building forward. The decision felt like the last chain breaking. Archer threw himself into the biggest update yet. A live event feature that would let users gather virtually or in person for workshops on authenticity. The launch campaign was personal. Archer recorded a short video introducing himself and why Forge existed. When he hit publish, he didn't check the views for 3 days. When he finally looked, the video had 500,000 plays. Comments poured in from men across the country sharing their own stories. Archer read until his eyes blurred, then turned to Miles. "This is bigger than me now." Miles pulled him into an embrace. "It always was. It always was." The realization carried Archer through the following turbulent weeks. Forge's live event feature launched to record attendance, but success brought new complications. A national news outlet wanted an interview, and this time the questions dug deep into his personal journey. Archer agreed on the condition that Miles could sit beside him off-camera for support. The segment aired, and suddenly his parents' phone started ringing with neighbors asking questions. His mother called first, voice trembling. "We watched it. We're trying to understand." Archer's throat tightened. "That's all I ever wanted, Mom." The conversation ended softer than any in months. Progress, however small, felt like oxygen. Yet not everyone celebrated. Jake showed up at the new office unannounced, looking thinner than Archer remembered. "We're struggling," he admitted after an awkward silence. "The app isn't landing. Investors are pulling out." Archer offered him coffee but kept the desk between them. "I'm sorry to hear that." Jake's eyes flicked to the Forge branding on the wall. "You built something real here. I was wrong about a lot of things." The apology hung in the air, incomplete but genuine. Archer didn't offer partnership, but he didn't slam the door either. After Jake left, Miles walked in from the back room. "You handled that better than I would have." Archer exhaled. "Feels weird. Like closing a chapter one didn't know was still open." The weeks that followed tested every boundary. A major competitor tried to copy Forge's journal feature, releasing a watered-down version marketed with the same bro language the pack once used. Archer felt the old anger rise, but instead of lashing out, he doubled down on community. He hosted the first in-person Forge meetup in Golden Gate Park, 50 men from the app showing up on a sunny Saturday. Watching them talk openly under the trees, Archer felt something heal inside him. Miles stood beside him, hand brushing his. "Look what you started." That evening they walked home through the park, fingers intertwined without fear for the first time in public. The small act felt revolutionary, yet home brought its own storm. Archer's father finally called directly. "I'm proud of the work you're doing," he said gruffly. "Doesn't mean I understand all of it." Archer closed his eyes. "Thanks, Dad. That means more than you know." The conversation was short, but the crack in the wall felt permanent. Meanwhile, Forge's numbers kept climbing. The investor money allowed Archer to hire 3 full-time staff: a developer, a community manager, and a therapist consultant. The office buzzed with energy. One night after everyone else had gone home, Miles found Archer staring at the city skyline from the window. "You're carrying the weight again," Miles said softly. Archer turned. "I keep thinking about the day they voted me out. How close I came to believing them." Miles stepped closer. "You didn't. That's the point." They stood together in the quiet office, and Archer felt the last pieces of doubt slip away. The following month brought the biggest decision yet. A Silicon Valley giant offered to acquire Forge for a life-changing sum. Archer spent 3 sleepless nights weighing the offer against his vision. Miles stayed up with him each night, listening, never pushing. On the 4th morning, Archer walked into the office and told the small team, "We're staying independent. This isn't about the money. It's about the mission." The room erupted in applause. That evening, Miles cooked dinner while Archer opened a bottle of champagne they had been saving. "To choices that matter," Miles toasted. Archer clinked his glass. "To us." The kiss that followed felt like the first honest breath he had taken since the conference room door slammed shut. "To us." The simple toast echoed in Archer's mind as spring gave way to summer and Forge continued its steady climb. User numbers crossed 50,000, and the team moved into a larger space with room for workshops. Archer found himself mentoring younger developers who reminded him of his younger self. Bright, scared, hungry to belong. One afternoon, a new hire named Leo asked, "How did you know when to walk away from the pack?" Archer smiled. "When staying meant shrinking myself." The answer came easier now. Yet the past refused to stay quiet. Tyler reached out again, this time with a proposal. The pack wanted to partner on a co-branded event. Archer read the email 3 times before showing it to Miles. "Part of me wants to say yes. Prove I'm bigger than the grudge." Miles studied him. "And the other part? Wants to protect what we built." They talked late into the night, weighing loyalty against self-preservation. In the end, Archer declined politely, offering instead to share resources for their users. The response from Tyler was gracious, and something in Archer loosened further. Family healing moved slower but deeper. His parents flew out for a long weekend, the first visit since the article. His father toured the office, asked careful questions, and on the last night over dinner said, "I don't have to understand everything to be proud of the man you've become." Archer's eyes stung. Miles squeezed his hand under the table. After they left, Archer stood on the balcony and cried for the first time in years, not from pain but from release. The emotional release carried into his work. Forge launched its first national campaign. Billboards in 5 cities featuring real user stories with faces blurred for privacy. The tagline read simply, "Be who you are. Build what matters." Miles designed every visual, and when the first billboard went up near the old incubator building, they drove past it together in silence. Archer reached over and turned off the radio. "I used to drive past that building every day wondering if I'd ever be enough for them. Now I drive past wondering how I ever thought I needed to be." Miles smiled. "You're more than enough." The summer brought one final test. A former pack investor who had once rejected Archer now tried to poach 2 of his staff with higher salaries. Archer called an all-hands meeting and laid out the truth. "I can't match every offer, but I can promise you belong here." Both employees stayed. The loyalty felt sweeter than any funding round. As the leaves began turning, Archer and Miles took a rare weekend away to Big Sur. They hiked the cliffs above the ocean, wind whipping their jackets. At the edge of a lookout, Miles stopped and turned to him. "Marry me?" The question was quiet, almost lost in the wind. Archer stared, heart hammering. "Yes." They laughed and cried and held each other while the Pacific crashed below. Back in the city, they kept the engagement private for now, letting the joy settle like a secret between them. Forge continued to grow, but the metrics mattered less than the messages Archer still read every week. Men saying the app had given them courage to come out, to leave toxic jobs, to reach out to estranged families. Each one reminded him why the lonely walk out of that conference room had been worth it. One crisp October morning, Jake sent a final text. "Saw the new numbers. Proud of you, man. For real this time." Archer read it twice, then replied with a single word, "Thanks." He set the phone down and looked across the office at Miles, who was laughing with the team over coffee. The picture felt complete. The picture felt complete as the year drew to a close and Forge crossed 100,000 users. The team threw a small holiday party in the office, string lights reflecting off the whiteboards still covered in ideas. Archer stood at the front, raising a glass. To every man who chose to show up as himself. The cheer that followed warmed him more than any champagne. Later, when the room emptied, he and Miles stayed behind, sitting on the floor surrounded by empty cups and leftover cake. Miles leaned against him. "Remember the day they voted you out?" Archer nodded. "Best thing that ever happened to me." The words were true in a way he could never have imagined 12 months earlier. The app had not only succeeded, it had reshaped how he saw himself, how he loved, and how he moved through the world. His parents sent a card with a gift card for the office espresso machine and a handwritten note that simply said, "We're learning." The pack quietly rebranded and found modest success, but their paths no longer crossed in anger. Archer had even grabbed coffee with Tyler twice, conversations light and free of old grudges. On New Year's Eve they stood on the same rooftop where they had toasted independence months earlier. Fireworks lit the San Francisco sky as Miles slipped a simple band onto Archer's finger. "Ready for whatever comes next?" Archer kissed him, tasting salt from the ocean breeze and certainty from the year behind them. "With you, always." The city sparkled below, full of stories just beginning. Archer thought of the boy from Texas who once believed he had to choose between love and belonging, and the man he had become who learned they could be the same thing. The journey had been messy, painful, and ultimately beautiful. As the final fireworks faded, he turned to Miles and smiled. "True or false? Sometimes the greatest success comes only after losing everything you thought mattered."